The soft hum of advanced machinery filled the hidden laboratory deep within Proxima Colony. Lena Matthews, her auburn hair tied back in a messy ponytail, leaned over a holographic display, her green eyes darting across streams of data. At just 17, she was the youngest lead researcher in the colony's history, a prodigy whose brilliance had earned her both admiration and envy. Come on, Lena muttered, her fingers dancing across the translucent keyboard. She was close to a breakthrough. She could feel it. The quantum entanglement stabilizer she'd been working on for months was finally showing promising results. A sudden tremor shook the lab, causing beakers to rattle and holoscreens to flicker. Lena steadied herself against her workstation, a frown creasing her brow. These tremors had been increasing in frequency over the past week, but the colony's leadership had remained tight-lipped about their cause. As the shaking subsided, Lena heard hurried footsteps approaching. She quickly saved her work and minimized the holographic displays. The lab door hissed open, revealing Dr. Emerson, the head of research at Proxima Colony. His usually meticulously groomed appearance was disheveled, and a sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead. "Lena, what are you still doing here?" he asked, his voice strained. "It's well past midnight." Lena shrugged, gesturing to her workstation. "I was making progress on the stabilizer. I think I'm close-to." "It doesn't matter," Dr. Emerson cut her off, waving a hand dismissively. "You need to go home and pack your essentials. Quickly." Alarm bells rang in Lena's mind. "Pack? Why? What's going on, Dr. Emerson?" The older scientist hesitated, conflict evident in his eyes. He glanced over his shoulder before stepping closer to Lena, lowering his voice. "The tremors, they're not natural. There's a cosmic anomaly approaching the colony. The leadership has decided to evacuate." Lena's eyes widened. "Evacuate? But where will we go? And what about our research?" "There's no time for questions," Dr. Emerson insisted. "Just go home, pack what you can carry, and report to the spaceport by 600 hours. That's an order, Lena." As Dr. Emerson turned to leave, Lena caught a glimpse of something in his hand. A data crystal, glowing with an eerie blue light. Before she could ask about it, he was gone, the lab door sliding shut behind him. Lena stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing. Something didn't add up. Why the secrecy? And why hadn't the general population been informed yet? With a determined set to her jaw, she turned back to her workstation and began to dig. Hours passed as Lena hacked her way through layers of encrypted data. The tremors continued sporadically, each one a little stronger than the last. As the first hints of artificial dawn began to lighten the colony's biodome, Lena finally found what she was looking for, and her blood ran cold. The cosmic anomaly wasn't just approaching, it was actively seeking out the colony. And worse, it wasn't the first time it had appeared. Historical data, buried under the highest levels of security, showed similar anomalies visiting other human colonies over the past century. Each visit ended the same way, with the complete disappearance of the colony and all its inhabitants. "They're not evacuating us," Lena whispered to herself, the horrifying truth dawning on her. "They're sacrificing the colony to save themselves." Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she tried to access the evacuation protocols. If she could just warn everyone, maybe they could. The lab door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Lena spun around, her heart pounding, to see a squad of security officers pouring into the room, led by none other than Dr. Emerson. "I'm disappointed, Lena," Dr. Emerson said, his earlier nervousness replaced by cold determination. "I had hoped you'd follow orders for once in your life." Lena backed away, her eyes darting between the armed officers. "You can't do this," she pleaded. "There are over 10,000 people in this colony. Families, children." Dr. Emerson's face hardened. "And billions more in the core systems who will be saved by the data we've gathered here. Sometimes, sacrifices must be made for the greater good." "This isn't sacrifice, it's murder." Lena shot back, her fear giving way to anger. A sad smile touched Dr. Emerson's lips. "I'm truly sorry, Lena. You could have been one of the greatest minds of our generation. But we can't risk you warning the others." He turned to the security team. "Take her to holding. Make sure she's sedated until we're well away from the colony." As the officers moved to grab her, Lena's hand found a heavy wrench on her workbench. With a cry of defiance, she swung it at the nearest officer, catching him off guard. In the moment of confusion that followed, she bolted for the emergency exit at the back of the lab. Alarms blared as Lena raced through the maze-like corridors of the research wing. Her mind whirled, trying to formulate a plan. She needed to warn people, but how? The colony's communication systems were undoubtedly locked down. A stitch formed in her side as she ran, the sound of pursuing footsteps echoing behind her. She rounded a corner and found herself in the hydroponics bay, rows of lush vegetation stretching out before her. Without hesitation, she dove into the foliage, crawling between rows of vegetables and fruit trees. As she caught her breath, hidden among the greenery, Lena's hand brushed against something cool and metallic. She looked down to see an old-fashioned tablet, likely left behind by one of the agricultural techs. A plan began to form in her mind. With trembling fingers, Lena activated the tablet and began to code. If she couldn't access the main communication systems, maybe she could piggyback on the hydroponics network to broadcast a warning. It wasn't much, but it might reach some of the agricultural sectors. Just as she was about to hit send, a sharp pain exploded in her shoulder. Lena cried out, her hand flying to the source of the pain only to find a small dart protruding from her skin. Her vision began to swim almost immediately. "No," she mumbled, fighting against the encroaching darkness. With the last of her strength, she pressed send on the tablet before the device slipped from her numbing fingers. The last thing Lena saw before unconsciousness claimed her was Dr. Emerson's face, looming over her with a mixture of regret and resolution. "I truly am sorry, Lena," he said softly. "But the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." As Lena's world faded to black, she clung to one final, desperate hope, that her message had gotten through, that someone, anyone, would hear her warning and survive. Hours later, Lena awoke with a pounding headache and a mouth that felt like it was stuffed with cotton. She blinked groggily, trying to make sense of her surroundings. She was lying on a cold metal floor in a dimly lit room. As her vision cleared, she realized with growing horror that she was in one of the colony's storage units. Ignoring the protest of her aching muscles, Lena pushed herself to her feet and staggered to the unit's small window. What she saw outside made her blood run cold. The once bustling corridors of Proxima Colony were deserted, emergency lights casting an eerie red glow over abandoned workstations and discarded personal items. "No," Lena whispered, her voice hoarse. "No, no, no." She pounded on the window, screaming for help, but only silence answered her cries. As the reality of her situation sank in, Lena slid to the floor, tears streaming down her face. She was alone, abandoned on a dying colony, with an unknown cosmic terror approaching. And yet, as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a small spark of defiance ignited in Lena's chest. She was still alive, and as long as she drew breath, she would fight. Fight to survive. Fight to uncover the truth, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to save herself and the legacy of Proxima Colony. Little did Lena know, her ordeal was just beginning, and fate had plans for her that would extend far beyond the confines of her abandoned home. Part 2. Alien Encounter. 1,200 words. The days following Lena's awakening blurred together in a haze of desperation and determination. She quickly realized that survival would be her first and most pressing challenge. The colony's life support systems were failing, one by one, as if counting down to an inevitable end. Lena's first order of business was to secure the hydroponics bay. With her access codes, she managed to reroute power to maintain critical systems in that section. It wasn't much, but it would provide her with air, water, and food, for a time. As she worked to stabilize her precarious existence, Lena's mind raced with questions. What was the cosmic anomaly that had scared the colony's leadership so badly? Why had they abandoned an entire population instead of attempting an evacuation? And most pressingly, how long did she have before whatever was coming arrived? On the 5th day of her solitude, Lena was jolted awake by a violent tremor that shook the entire colony. Alarms blared as she stumbled out of her makeshift bed in the hydroponics bay. The emergency lights flickered ominously, casting wild shadows across the corridor. Warning: structural integrity compromised in Sector 7. An automated voice announced over the colony speakers. Emergency protocols initiated. Sector 7, the science labs. Lena's heart raced as she realized her research, and potentially the answers she sought, might be destroyed. Without a second thought, she grabbed her emergency kit and raced towards the labs. The journey through the abandoned corridors was harrowing. Periodic tremors sent debris raining from the ceiling, and more than once, Lena had to backtrack to find an alternate route around collapsed sections. As she approached Sector 7, a deafening roar filled the air, followed by the screech of tearing metal. Lena rounded a corner and skidded to a halt, her eyes widening in disbelief at the scene before her. A massive hole had been torn in the side of the colony, opening directly into the alien landscape of Proxima. And there, silhouetted against the ruddy light of the planet's red dwarf star, was something Lena could scarcely comprehend. It looked like a ship, but unlike any she had ever seen. Its surface seemed to ripple and shift, as if it were made of living metal. As Lena watched, frozen in a mix of terror and awe, a section of the ship's hull peeled back, and a figure emerged. The alien, for it could be nothing else, was massive, easily twice Lena's height. Its body seemed to be a mix of organic and mechanical parts, with limbs that moved with an unsettling fluidity. What Lena assumed was its head swiveled towards her, multiple eyes glowing with an inner light. For a moment, neither moved. Then, the alien took a lurching step forward and collapsed. Lena's scientific curiosity warred with her survival instincts, every fiber of her being screamed at her to run, to hide, to get as far away from this unknown entity as possible. But another part of her, the part that had driven her to become the youngest lead researcher in the colony, urged her forward. "Hello," she called out tentatively, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can you understand me?" The alien's form shuddered, and a sound emanated from it, a low, keening noise that made the hairs on the back of Lena's neck stand up. It was a sound of pain, she realized, universal in its anguish. Before she could second-guess herself, Lena was moving. She approached the fallen alien cautiously, her eyes darting between its prone form and the ship it had emerged from. As she got closer, she could see what looked like wounds on the alien's body, tears in its organic components, sparking fissures in its mechanical parts. "You're hurt," Lena said, more to herself than the alien. She knelt beside it, her hands hovering uncertainly over its strange form. I want to help. Can you tell me how?" The alien's eyes, all 7 of them, focused on Lena. There was an intelligence in that gaze that both thrilled and terrified her. Slowly, one of its limbs moved, revealing a deep gash in what Lena guessed was its midsection. Taking a deep breath, Lena opened her emergency kit. "Okay," she muttered. "Xenobiology crash course. Here goes nothing." Over the next few hours, Lena worked tirelessly to tend to the alien's wounds. It was unlike anything she had ever done, a mix of first aid, engineering, and pure guesswork. The alien remained still throughout, watching her with those unnerving eyes. As she worked, Lena found herself talking to fill the silence. She told the alien about the colony, about being left behind, about her fears and her determination to survive. Whether it understood her or not, the act of speaking aloud helped calm her nerves and focus her mind. Finally, Lena sat back, exhausted but satisfied. She had done the best she could with her limited knowledge and resources. The alien's wounds were sealed, its mechanical components no longer sparking ominously. "There," she said, offering a tired smile to her patient. "That's the best I can do. I hope it helps." To her amazement, the alien began to move. It lifted itself up, its form shifting and rearranging until it was upright. It towered over Lena, who scrambled to her feet, suddenly very aware of how small and vulnerable she was. The alien made a series of clicks and whirs, its eyes dimming and brightening in a pattern Lena couldn't decipher. Then, slowly, it extended a limb towards her. Lena held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. The alien's appendage stopped just short of touching her forehead. There was a moment of absolute stillness, and then a spark jumped between them. Lena gasped as her mind was flooded with images and sensations. She saw stars and planets she didn't recognize, felt the cold of deep space and the heat of alien suns, and underlying it all was a sense of gratitude and curiosity. As quickly as it had begun, the connection ended. Lena staggered back, her head spinning from the alien contact. When she looked up, she saw that the alien had retreated several steps, its posture suggesting wariness, or perhaps respect. "You're welcome," Lena ventured, still reeling from the experience. "Do you have a name? Can you understand me?" The alien made another series of sounds, different from before. To Lena's astonishment, she found that she could almost understand them, as if the brief mental contact had created a rudimentary bridge between their minds. "Echo," she said suddenly, the word appearing in her mind. "Your name is Echo," or "That's the closest I can come to pronouncing it." The alien, Echo, bobbed its head in what Lena interpreted as affirmation. It then turned towards its ship, making a gesture that clearly meant for Lena to follow. Lena hesitated. Following an unknown alien into its ship went against every survival instinct she had. But then again, she was already in an impossible situation, and the curiosity that had driven her all her life urged her forward. "All right, Echo," she said, squaring her shoulders. "Let's see what you have to show me." As Lena stepped towards the alien ship, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was crossing a threshold, not just physically, but into a new chapter of her life, and perhaps of human history itself. Whatever lay ahead, she was determined to face it with the same courage and curiosity that had brought her this far. Little did she know that her encounter with Echo was just the beginning of an adventure that would challenge everything she thought she knew about the universe and her place in it. Hunted, 1,200 words. As Lena stepped into Echo's ship, her senses were overwhelmed. The interior seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, surfaces shifting and reforming as if the vessel itself were alive. Bioluminescent patterns danced across the walls, responding to their movements. "This is incredible," Lena breathed, her scientific mind already racing with questions and theories. Echo made a series of clicks and whirs, which Lena was surprised to find she could now partially understand. The alien was trying to explain something about the ship's systems, but before she could grasp the concept, a shrill alarm cut through the air. Echo's posture changed instantly, its form becoming more rigid. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a three-dimensional map of the local space around Proxima. Several red dots were rapidly approaching the planet. "Are those ships?" Lena asked, a knot of fear forming in her stomach. Echo confirmed her suspicion with a grim series of tones. These weren't friendly visitors. They were hunters, drawn by the energy signature of Echo's crashed ship. "We need to hide," Lena said urgently. "Can you get this ship airborne?" Echo's response was negative. The crash had damaged critical systems, and repairs would take time they didn't have. As the reality of their situation sank in, Lena's mind raced through possible solutions. "The colony," she said suddenly. "It has defensive systems. If I can reactivate them, maybe we can use them to fight off these hunters." Echo seemed skeptical, but with no better options, it agreed. They quickly exited the ship, Lena leading the way back into the abandoned colony. As they moved, Lena explained her plan. The main control center should allow us to access all systems. If we can reroute power and bypass the security protocols, we might be able to bring the defenses online. They had just reached the central corridor when a violent tremor shook the colony. The hunters had entered the atmosphere. Time was running out. Lena and Echo raced towards the control center, the alien's fluid movements allowing it to keep pace with her despite its size. As they ran, Lena noticed something strange. The colony's systems, which had been failing steadily since the evacuation, seemed to be stabilizing. Lights flickered back to life, and she could hear the hum of machinery coming back online. "Are you doing this?" she asked Echo as they reached the control center doors. The alien's response was uncertain. It seemed just as puzzled by the colony's reactivation as she was. There was no time to dwell on the mystery, however. The doors to the control center were sealed, the security lockdown still in effect. "I need to bypass the lock," Lena said, moving to a nearby access panel. "Can you keep watch?" Echo took up a defensive position as Lena worked. Her fingers flew across the keypad, inputting override codes and hacking through security layers. She was so focused on her task that she almost missed Echo's warning cry. Lena looked up just in time to see a bolt of energy streak past her head, leaving a scorched mark on the wall behind her. At the end of the corridor stood three figures, humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. Their bodies were covered in sleek, metallic armor, and they carried weapons unlike anything Lena had ever seen. "The hunters," she gasped. Echo moved with incredible speed, interposing its massive form between Lena and the attackers. It extended several limbs, which began to glow with an intense energy. "No," Lena cried out. "You're still injured. You can't fight them alone." But Echo paid no heed to her warning. It engaged the hunters, its body twisting and shifting to avoid their energy blasts while returning fire with its own weapons. The corridor became a chaotic battlefield, filled with flashing lights and the scream of energy weapons. Lena turned back to the access panel, her hands shaking as she worked. She could hear the sounds of combat behind her, punctuated by Echo's pained cries. She had to get those defenses online, or they were both doomed. Just as she input the final override code, a stray blast hit the panel, sending a surge of electricity through her body. Lena cried out in pain, collapsing to the floor. Through blurred vision, she saw Echo faltering, overwhelmed by the hunters' coordinated assault. As her consciousness began to fade, Lena felt a strange sensation. It was as if her mind was expanding, reaching out beyond the confines of her body. She could sense the colony around her, not just the physical structure, but the intricate web of systems and machinery that gave it life. In that moment of connection, Lena understood. The colony wasn't just responding to Echo's presence, it was responding to her. Somehow, her desperate need had awakened something within the very fabric of the station. With the last of her strength, Lena focused her thoughts on the defensive systems. She visualized them coming online, targeting the intruders, protecting her and Echo. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Panels in the walls slid open, revealing hidden weapon arrays. Energy fields sprang to life, creating barriers between Echo and the hunters. The entire corridor was bathed in a pulsing blue light as the colony's defenses activated. The hunters, caught off guard by the sudden change, fell back. Their energy weapons seemed to have little effect on the shimmering barriers now protecting Lena and Echo. Echo, sensing the opportunity, pressed its advantage. It launched a barrage of energy blasts through gaps in the barrier, forcing the hunters into retreat. Within moments, they had disappeared back the way they came, leaving behind only scorched walls and the lingering smell of ozone. As the immediate danger passed, Lena felt her strange connection to the colony fade. She slumped against the wall, exhausted beyond measure. Echo moved to her side, its movements now slow and pained. "We did it," Lena said weakly, managing a small smile. "But how? How did I do that?" Echo's response was a series of soft tones that Lena interpreted as both gratitude and confusion. It seemed the alien was just as puzzled by her sudden ability as she was. Before they could ponder the mystery further, a new alarm sounded. The holographic display that had followed them from Echo's ship reappeared, showing the hunters' vessels retreating from Proxima. But there was something else, a much larger ship entering the system. Echo's reaction told Lena everything she needed to know. This new arrival wasn't just another hunter. It was something far more dangerous. "We need to move," Lena said, forcing herself to her feet despite her exhaustion. "The colony responded to me once. Maybe I can use it to send a distress signal or to hide us somehow." As they made their way deeper into the heart of the colony, Lena's mind raced with questions. What was the connection between her and the colony systems? Who were these hunters, and what did they want with Echo? And most pressingly, what new threat was bearing down on them? One thing was clear: their ordeal was far from over. But as Lena glanced at Echo, seeing the determination in its alien features, she felt a surge of hope. They had survived this far against impossible odds. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Little did Lena know that the true test of her newfound abilities and of the bond forming between her and Echo was yet to come. The hunt was only beginning, and the stakes were higher than she could possibly imagine. Revelations, 1,200 words. The heart of Proxima Colony thrummed with renewed energy as Lena and Echo made their way through its winding corridors. Every step seemed to awaken more systems, lights flickering to life and dormant machinery whirring into action. Lena's mind buzzed with a strange awareness of the colony's inner workings, as if she had become an extension of its vast network. "Echo," Lena said, pausing to catch her breath. "I need to understand what's happening. Who are those hunters? Why are they after you? And what's this connection I seem to have with the colony?" Echo's response came in a series of complex tones and gestures. As it communicated, Lena felt a tingling sensation in her temples, and suddenly, understanding bloomed in her mind like a flower unfurling its petals. Images flashed before her eyes. Echo's homeworld, a place of breathtaking beauty and advanced technology beyond her wildest imagination. She saw Echo's people, a race of beings that had evolved beyond the constraints of fixed physical forms, seamlessly blending organic and mechanical elements. "You're a scout," Lena gasped as the realization hit her. "Your people send scouts to emerging civilizations to observe and test them." Echo confirmed her understanding. Its people, the Synaptics, had long acted as silent guardians of the galaxy, guiding young species towards enlightenment and integration into the greater cosmic community. But their methods were subtle, their presence hidden from those they watched over. The hunters, Echo explained, were a faction that disagreed with this approach. They sought to steal synaptic technology and use it to dominate less advanced races. The ship that had just entered the system belonged to their leader, a ruthless being known as the Harvester. "But why did they come here? How did they know you had crashed?" Lena asked. Echo's answer sent a chill down her spine. The cosmic anomaly that had scared away the colony's leadership wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a synaptic test, designed to gauge humanity's response to a potential crisis. The evacuation of Proxima Colony had been humanity's failure. So, all of this, it was just a test. And we failed. Lena's voice cracked with emotion. The betrayal she had experienced, the abandonment of an entire colony, it all seemed even more cruel in light of this revelation. Echo's response was gentle, almost apologetic. The test wasn't meant to cause harm, but to observe how humanity would react under pressure. The fact that the leadership had chosen to abandon the colony rather than face the challenge head-on was deeply disappointing to the Synaptics. "But what about me?" Lena asked. "I stayed. I survived. Doesn't that count for something?" Before Echo could respond, a violent tremor shook the colony. Warning klaxons blared as the Harvester's ship began its assault, its weapons far more powerful than those of the initial hunters. Lena stumbled, catching herself against a wall. As her hand made contact with the surface, she felt a surge of energy course through her body. The colony's systems responded instantly, defensive shields snapping into place just as a massive energy blast struck the outer hull. "How am I doing this?" Lena wondered aloud, staring at her hands in amazement. Echo's explanation came in a rush of images and sensations. The synaptics had left safeguards in place on worlds they visited, hidden technologies that could be activated in times of great need. Somehow, Lena had formed a symbiotic link with these systems, her human intuition and creativity merging with synaptic tech in a way that even Echo hadn't thought possible. "So I'm not just controlling the colony," Lena said slowly, piecing it together. "I'm evolving it, adapting it to fight back." Echo confirmed her theory, its tone carrying a note of excitement. What Lena was doing was unprecedented, a human mind interfacing directly with synaptic technology, pushing it to new limits. Another blast rocked the colony, and Lena felt the strain through her newfound connection. She gritted her teeth, focusing her will on maintaining the shields. "We can't just defend," she said. "We need to fight back." With Echo's guidance, Lena began to explore the full extent of her connection to the colony. She found she could do more than just activate existing systems. She could reconfigure them, combining human ingenuity with alien technology in ways neither species had imagined. Under Lena's direction, the colony's structure began to shift. Walls retracted, revealing hidden weapon arrays far more advanced than anything humanity had developed. Repair drones swarmed damaged areas, their programming enhanced by Lena's intuitive understanding of the colony's needs. As the battle raged on, Lena felt herself growing stronger, more in tune with the alien technology. But with this power came a growing realization of the stakes they faced. "Echo," she said during a lull in the harvester's assault, "if the hunters get their hands on this technology, on me, they could use it to subjugate entire worlds, couldn't they?" Echo's affirmative response was solemn. The hunters had long sought a way to control synaptic technology. If they captured Lena, with her unique ability to interface with and adapt the alien systems, they would become nearly unstoppable. The weight of this knowledge settled heavily on Lena's shoulders. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival anymore, or even for Echo's. The fate of countless worlds, of entire civilizations, could hinge on the outcome of this battle. As if sensing her resolve, the colony responded with renewed vigor. Lena felt power surging through every system, every circuit. She closed her eyes, envisioning the modifications they needed, the strategies that could turn the tide. When she opened them again, the control room had transformed. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing every aspect of the battle in real time. She could see the harvester's ship, its shields weakening under the colony's counterattack. "We have a chance," Lena said, hope rising in her chest. "But we need to end this decisively, if we can take out their main power core." Echo moved to her side, its form shifting to interface directly with the colony's systems. Together, they began to formulate a plan. A daring, almost reckless strategy that would require perfect timing and coordination. As they worked, Lena felt a deepening of their connection. It was more than just a merging of minds or sharing of information. She sensed Echo's essence, its hopes and fears, its long history of watching over younger races. And she knew that Echo could sense her in return, her determination, her curiosity, her fierce desire to protect not just herself, but all those who might fall victim to the hunter's ambitions. "Are you ready?" Lena asked as they finalized their plan. Echo's response wasn't just an affirmation. It was a declaration of trust, of partnership. Whatever the outcome, they would face it together. Lena took a deep breath, feeling the combined power of human spirit and alien technology coursing through her. "Then let's show the harvester what happens when they underestimate humanity." With a thought, she set their plan in motion. The colony's structure began to shift once more, but this time with purpose and precision. As the final pieces fell into place, Lena allowed herself a small, determined smile. The true battle was about to begin, and with it, the ultimate test of everything Lena had learned, everything she had become. The fate of Proxima Colony, and perhaps of humanity's future among the stars, hung in the balance. Humanity's trial, 1,200 words. The vastness of space became a battlefield as Lena and Echo launched their desperate counteroffensive against the Harvester. Proxima Colony, once a testament to human expansion, now pulsed with an alien energy that defied comprehension. Lena stood at the heart of it all. Her consciousness expanded far beyond the confines of her physical form. Through her symbiotic link with the colony's systems, she could feel every blast that struck their shields, every surge of power through the reconfigured weapon arrays. Echo, status on the Harvester's shields. Lena called out, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Echo's response came not in words, but in a stream of data that flowed directly into Lena's mind. The Harvester's defenses were formidable, adapting to each new attack with frightening speed. But there was a pattern to their adaptations, a rhythm that Lena's human intuition could sense. "There," she exclaimed, highlighting a section of the enemy ship's schematics. "Their shield matrix has a fluctuation cycle. If we time our attacks just right." She didn't need to finish the thought. Echo was already moving, its form flowing like liquid metal as it interfaced with the colony's targeting systems. Together, they began to synchronize their assault with the Harvester's shield cycles. The battle intensified, space itself seeming to warp and twist under the strain of the energies being unleashed. Lena pushed the colony's systems to their limits, drawing on reserves of power she hadn't known existed. With each volley, their attacks grew more precise, more devastating. But the Harvester was far from defeated. A massive energy surge from the enemy ship tore through the colony's outer defenses, ripping away entire sections of the structure. Lena cried out, feeling the damage as if it were inflicted on her own body. "We can't take much more of this," she gasped, struggling to reroute power and seal off the breached areas. Echo's response was grim. The Harvester was preparing for a final, all-out assault. If they couldn't find a way to end this soon, all would be lost. As Lena frantically worked to shore up their defenses, a strange calm settled over her. In that moment of clarity, she saw the solution. Brilliant, terrifying, and utterly necessary. "Echo," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I know how we can beat them. But it's going to take everything we've got." Literally. She laid out her plan, a daring strategy that would push their symbiosis to its absolute limits. They would unleash a massive electromagnetic pulse, one capable of overloading the Harvester's systems. But to generate a pulse of that magnitude, they would need to channel the energy of the entire colony, including the synaptic safeguards that gave Lena her abilities. "If we do this," Lena said, meeting Echo's gaze, "there's a good chance we won't survive. And even if we do..." She left the thought unfinished, but Echo understood. Success would mean the destruction of the very technology that had allowed Lena to interface with the colony. She would lose this incredible connection, this expansion of her consciousness that had become a part of her. Echo's response was immediate and unwavering. It stood with her, ready to make the sacrifice if it meant stopping the Harvester and protecting countless worlds from their predations. With renewed determination, Lena and Echo began the intricate process of preparation. They rerouted every scrap of power, reconfigured every system to channel energy into one massive coordinated burst. As they worked, Lena felt the colony changing around them, components shifting and merging in ways that blurred the line between human technology and alien artifice. The Harvester, sensing the buildup of energy, intensified its assault. The colony shuddered under the barrage, systems failing faster than Lena could reroute them. But she held on, her mind stretched to its limits as she coordinated their defenses and continued the pulse preparations. Almost there, Lena gritted out, sweat beading on her forehead. "We just need a few more seconds." A particularly violent blast rocked the control room, sending sparks flying from overloaded consoles. Lena stumbled, her concentration wavering. In that moment of weakness, she felt a surge of foreign consciousness. The Harvester, attempting to breach her mental defenses and seize control of the colony systems. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but then she felt Echo's presence, steadfast and unwavering. The alien's mind enveloped hers, shielding her from the Harvester's assault. Together, they pushed back against the intrusion, their combined will an impenetrable barrier. With a final, Herculean effort, Lena completed the pulse configuration. "Now, Echo," she cried, "give it everything you've got." In perfect unison, Lena and Echo unleashed the full power of Proxima Colony. A blinding light erupted from the station, expanding outward in a rapidly growing sphere. Lena felt the pulse tear through her, stripping away layers of consciousness, severing her connection to the colony's systems one synapse at a time. The Harvester's ship, caught in the heart of the electromagnetic storm, went dark. Its weapons fell silent, its engines sputtered and died. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, everything was still. Then, slowly, emergency lights began to flicker back to life in the colony's control room. Lena found herself on the floor, every muscle aching, her head pounding with the worst migraine she'd ever experienced. But she was alive. "Echo," she called out weakly, her voice hoarse. "Are you there?" For a heart-stopping moment, there was no response. Then, a familiar series of clicks and whirs reached her ears. Echo emerged from behind a damaged console, its form flickering and unstable but undeniably present. Relief washed over Lena, followed quickly by realization. She reached out with her mind, searching for the connection to the colony's systems that had become so familiar. But where that vast network of information had been, there was now only silence. "It's gone," she whispered, a mix of sadness and awe in her voice. "We really did it." Echo moved to her side, offering silent support. As Lena struggled to her feet, a new alarm began to sound. The holographic displays, miraculously still functional, showed a fleet of ships entering the system. But these weren't hunter vessels. They bore the markings of Earth's defense force. "Looks like someone finally decided to check on us," Lena said with a weak laugh. As the human ships approached, Lena turned to Echo. There would be questions, to briefings, probably years of scientific study ahead. The arrival of Earth's fleet marked the end of their isolation, but it was also humanity's first real step into a much larger universe. "What happens now?" she asked. "Will your people make contact? Will you leave?" Echo's response was complex, a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The synaptics would be watching, evaluating humanity's response to this incident. Lena's actions had opened up new possibilities, new paths for interaction between their species. As for Echo itself, its mission had changed. It would stay, acting as a bridge between humanity and the synaptics. There was much to learn, much to explore, and Echo couldn't imagine a better partner for that journey than Lena. Lena smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with alien technology. "Well then, partner," she said, extending her hand to Echo. "I guess we've got work to do." As Echo's appendage met her hand, Lena felt a spark of connection, not the vast network she had experienced before, but something smaller, more personal, and in many ways, more profound. Together, they turned to face the approaching ships and the dawn of a new era for humanity. The trial wasn't over, in many ways, it was just beginning. But with Echo by her side, and the memory of what they had accomplished together, Lena knew they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity had just taken its first real step into that grand cosmic dance. And Lena, once abandoned and alone, now stood at the forefront of this new frontier, ready to lead the way into a future bright with possibility.